We've made it. We're filming this YouTube video. There is a lot to cover. I'm going to keep this as a one take because I have run out of time in my life, and there's an important reason why. But this video is going to be mainly about depression and what I've done to conquer my depression / overcome it. It's sort of the trilogy of two other videos I made in the past 4 or 5 years where I talked about how I was suffering from pretty severe depression, and what it looked like was bipolar disorder. I was never diagnosed, but that's what it looked like. I would have these extremely manic highs, like Gojo saying, "I am the honored one," or whatever he said, and then the lowest possible within the same day. And I realized that this was strange when I talked to my therapist, who I have newly acquired, and she was saying that that the fact that it happened in the same day was pretty strange. So I'm going to go over how I fixed it. The reason I'm keeping this video as authentic as possible is because one other thing that I've discovered in my life is that I need to connect my authentic self with the form of myself that is trying to entertain. So I want to keep this talking raw because I also want it to feel somewhat like a podcast. And I like content where people just sort of talk straight, even if they have to think through their ideas while it's being filmed. I also want to talk about another aspect of my life that's happening, which is I'm moving to Texas. So in the last maybe 3.5 months, I have not experienced any low lows, which is surprising because for the past 4 or 5 years, I experienced them, I think I said 3 to 5 times a week. So to not have that happen for 3 months in a row is actually wild. And there are maybe 4 or 5 things that I did that have completely just changed the being that I am. And a lot of it is mindset, which, spoiler alert, but this is also a video that's going to be dedicated to my younger self and trying to give advice that's going to help that person not have to run into all the roadblocks that I did. The reason I said it's ironic that there's another subject in this video to talk about that's basically the opposite of depression is it's also been the hardest year of my life by far. And the things we're dealing with right now are probably the hardest circumstances my wife and I will have to deal with for a very long time still. And this whole year has been that way. And if I wasn't prepared, if I didn't fix myself this year, then I don't know if I would have been able to deal with a lot of what has happened. I will say that I think partially this year's toughness is kind of responsible for me feeling better, for feeling like, oh, I can get through sort of anything. But let me start from what I think is the beginning of the conversation of depression and how to overcome it. This video is also sponsored by Squarespace because I really don't have time to make a lot of videos where only a few of them are sponsored. 2 of the videos a month right now is the only cadence I can stick to until I come up with a more, a better schedule and life isn't throwing so many things at me. Someone's walking by my car very slowly and strangely. So I'm going to, anyways, this video is sponsored by Squarespace, the best website for building websites. I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. So yes, they are walking by and they are through. Okay. What is the main thing I did at the beginning to overcome depression? It was fitness. Now, I know everyone says this. Obviously, there's the aspect of your brain where there's chemical changes that are happening as you're working out more, but it's also proving to yourself that you're the type of person that you can be when you want to be that person, right? So you're the kind of person who can change. This, to me, was the biggest factor with everything. I felt like I was stuck falling into the same traps over and over and over, and that I could never escape who I was. I would start to work out a little bit, and then I would get over it. So it became this point where I went, how do I just keep working out? Well, 1, you got to keep it easy, but 2, this was the major thing, I dedicated myself entirely, essentially, to a new person, to my daughter. And just trying to be the perfect version of myself for my daughter, who I truly love unconditionally, I realized that I didn't really love myself. So why would I want to change for myself if I didn't even care about myself? That's why the changes don't stick. It's because you don't even like yourself. You don't even love yourself, right? You need to change for someone who you love, and then you become the kind of person that you love, and then you do want to change for the person you love. So that's why change is compounding once you can get past that initial hurdle. So for me, fully depressed, could not change, wouldn't change for myself, would start to change, and then realize, why am I even doing this for this guy I don't even like? So working out, that's number 1. You're starting to prove to yourself that you can change, and then you start throwing other things in. So for me, that was the main important thing. As I started to work out, I would literally have workouts where I would start crying because I'd be so elated. I'd be so excited to become this new person. The second thing I would say is that the vessel that you are, this body that you're in, that's the body that is depressed. That is the person that is continuously falling into depression. So for me, I had to change entirely. I couldn't just keep up with the fitness. The fitness is the propeller to everything else. Once I knew I could change, then it was like, what other aspect do I need to change? Well, to me, if this entirety of me is what caused me to be depressed or led me into depression, then I want to change everything. What other aspect of me is there? Okay, well, I'm a professional skateboarder who makes YouTube videos. Has making YouTube videos or skateboarding led to me feeling worse or better about myself? Well, it's kind of made me feel worse because I feel like there are other things I want to experience, but skateboarding is my drug of choice. It's the thing that I always go back to because I'm good at it and makes me feel good about myself. I make videos about it because that makes me feel good about myself, and it's my job. It's how I make money, and I'm scared to try anything else. I didn't know I was the kind of person who was scared, but I realized there were so many things stacked up with this identity of myself that if one thing crumbled, I was afraid that everything was going to crumble. But what I didn't realize is that everything needed to crumble. I needed to be a new person. I needed to realize that that person is dead. So I essentially quit skateboarding as much as I could. I don't really like skateboarding in LA as a side note, which is strange because it's the best place for skateboarding. But when I visit Texas, I skate again because the atmosphere of Texas to me is much better for me mentally, and there's a lot better skate parks where there's not a lot of people and there's not this drive to be this skateboard content creator famous person. That just doesn't exist in Texas in the same way, I think. So it's a lot easier for me to function in Texas because I don't feel this subconscious need to compete against the people around me, which in California I do, which I thought was a good thing. And I realized, no, it's just making me do more of the same of the thing that I was already doing. So I essentially quit skateboarding as much as I can. I quit YouTube as much as I can. And this is another, so basically quitting all the things that even if you think that it's good for you, like I thought skateboarding and making money via YouTube was good for me, it wasn't. I quit those things and I started feeling even better. So I was working out, proved to myself that I wasn't the person, that I was the kind of person who can work out, quit YouTube, quit skateboarding momentarily. It's not a thing that I want to quit forever, but it's a way to basically be like, oh, I can quit. I can stop this thing. You have to prove to yourself that you have the ability to stop. So this is the same, I would assume, the same thing that certain people do who are alcoholics, who want to quit smoking. Proving to yourself that you're the kind of person who can quit, obviously, is very important for quitting. So on top of that, I would say mindset is the most important thing. So believing that you're the type of person who can basically achieve anything that you set your desires to, which is true. You just can't achieve everything, as I say. You can't be 50 of the greatest of each category. You can't be the person who's the greatest in 50 different categories, but you can be the greatest in a category. You can choose things that you want to be good at. So it's sort of honing down on a few things to really, really play with, or even one thing different that excites you. And for me, that was sort of the art world in general. Now, unfortunately, I still have 1,000 different ideas of how to explore that, but it just seemed interesting. I wanted to hear from, I mentioned in a video before about, oh, maybe one day I could just get a job at Disney, or maybe I'm just interested in hearing what Disney animators have to say, how Disney works, how it operates. And maybe I'll set up a podcast eventually to sort of go through that. And it was like, cool. Well, that's an eventual goal. But I leaned into drawing more. I started creating a lot of prints. I started creating a business around art. That made me realize, okay, well, I can try to build a business around something else. And people have actually been sort of interested in it who follow me, which is surprising because the art and the vibe and everything is so much different, because my art is very designery, kid-friendly, children's book looking, but deep messages about inspiration and things like that, which I find very inspiring. A lot of people do not care at all about that, and that's perfectly fine. Most of the people who follow me do not care about that, but I like it. So your mindset needs to change. You need to be someone who isn't self-deprecating in a lot of ways. If you're someone who struggles with that, then try to avoid self-deprecation altogether. Try to avoid anything that makes you feel bad. Try to avoid people who make you feel bad, who say anything that bothers you, including your family. What minute are we? We're at 9. Okay, I got to do the Squarespace brand deal because we're at 9 minutes, and then we will finish everything else. We'll talk about what's going on in my life, and then the last few things about the depression. But Squarespace it's the best website for building websites. They have award-winning templates you can choose from. It's essentially drag and drop. It's very easy to use. And when it comes to getting any website to build websites, You want to go with Squarespace in terms of like their abilities. I mean, it's also the most popular brand that exists, and there's a reason for that. They have online stores, so you can set up, if you just design something, they'll fulfill all the orders for you. So if you design t-shirts, they'll just fulfill them for you, so you don't have to put in the effort of having all the stock at your house. If you have a special skill or talent, you can set up an online course and have a paywall on your website. They make it very intuitive and easy, and they have also, the best thing ever that I never mention is they have live chat. So if you're struggling during the week, whenever, you can actually just hit up someone and they'll just guide you through the process, which is incredible. They have blogging tools, they have analytics, and every time there's sort of this like new creative entrepreneur type thing that you need, like courses, etc., they implement it onto their site, and they're like the first ones to do that. So somebody else is going to walk by. I always get distracted, so I have to like wait for people to walk by. But if you want to check it out, you can click the link in the description down below, or go to squarespace.com/John Hill to get 10% off your first purchase or domain. Check it out. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and let's continue on with the conversation of depression. So with the mindset shift, here's what I did. I think it's easy for a lot of us as skaters, especially cynical humans in general, to feel like we're above these people on Instagram who are like, I gotta wake up at 5 a.m., I gotta do this, I gotta grind, I gotta do this. There's this clip of this guy, Ed Milet, and he talks about, he's like, I actually turned 1 day into 4 days. My first day is I wake up at 4 a.m. and then to 7 a.m. That's 1 day. And I make sure I do everything in that 1 day. And then boom, I get 4 days in 1 day where a regular person gets 1 day. And the clip went really viral because people were memeing it. I think if you want a growth mindset, you got to stop making fun of things. You just got to stop finding the negative and finding the wrong in things, especially when in this case, it's pretty easy to find the good in things. It's pretty easy to be like, okay, I think I know what he's trying to say. He's trying to say that if you have the mindset that your day is only 3 or 4 hours long, you'll be way more productive, which is true. I have a daughter now. I have much more limited time. My days are way more productive now because I only have 3 hours. There's a wildness to the fact that if you have a short amount of time, you can get the thing you need done. If you have a time limit, like I got to finish this in 48 hours and it's a huge project, you could probably get it done. If you have 9 months to do it, you'll finish it just in time. It's wild how that works. So he's right in that sense, but it was memed and that's how I saw it. This happens all the time. People make fun of this sort of world a lot. You want to avoid being the person who finds the bad in things. You want to be the person who avoids finding the negative. Yes, you can find a community of people who hate on the same thing as you, but do you really want a community of people who are making fun of things all the time, who are in some ways toxic? I don't think they're two of the same thing. You know, making fun of things all the time is not that bad. But if you're struggling mentally, then maybe it is kind of bad for you. Maybe you're not the kind of person who needs to find the bad, find the negative. Don't watch any content that just criticizes other people at all. Do not watch the news at all. This is my opinion, of course. Avoid anything like that because the news is, most things like that, or like Philip DeFranco, not even that. Like things like that, avoid as much as you possibly can. You do not need to keep up with what's going on in places that you can't help or fix or change. And that's the lie that people say is like, well, if you're not informed, then how are you going to make a difference? And it's like, the only reason they're saying that is because they're trying to guilt you into watching their content. That's what the news does. They try to guilt you into watching their things. You actually can't do a lot about a lot of things unless you dedicate your life to it, and that's great. Then watch that, but find resources that talk about that specific thing, not everything. The news covers everything that is bad, everything that is exciting. You don't need all this extra adrenaline that doesn't help you in your life. You just don't need it. It's like, it just distracts you from the main goal, which is yourself and your family and your friends. Reality, essentially. You don't need to be distracted from reality all the time. These are all the steps you take. You start slowly moving in this direction where you get excited to hear a clip of a guy saying, this is how I'm happy. This is what you... I started listening to a lot more coach type content that I think I previously would have made fun of. I listen to it now with open ears and an open heart and an open mind, and I love it. I think it's fantastic. I love hearing how people are more productive. I love hearing positive, uplifting content. There's a lot of content out there, where people basically just gas you up. They say, you can do this, you're the best, you're great. And it's just these podcasts of these bros, but it's incredible. I love it. I love finding things that I think Here's another thing. So this is a perfect example. This is the thing that sort of concludes this entire segment. a lot of us have probably said or have wanted to say that's easy for you to say. To me, I would still be depressed if that sentence was in my head. If you can figure out a way to get yourself away from that sentence as far as you can, you will be happy. Because people say that when they're concerned about other people's lives. But not only that, it's when you have this feeling that you don't have an advantage. Everything about you is victimhood. You're just victimizing yourself as much as you can. That sentence is the amalgamation of the mindset you do not want. Do not be on the internet saying that's easy for you to say. Even though, yes, I know we know that it is for certain people. I know we know that, right? You know it instinctively. But sometimes having a feeling of something and not consciously putting it out there is a good thing. Because a lot of times when you talk about things, you're reiterating sort of a insecurity or a negative stigma. But just because this celebrity's parent is a celebrity and they were able to become a celebrity doesn't mean I need to think about it or care about it. It has nothing to do with my ability in life. It has nothing to do with it. Anyways, so as a little recap, to get over my depression was fitness first. And then it was changing me altogether. And then it was growth mindset. Having the belief that I am able and capable of doing anything and not digesting the negative. These were massive things to me. And then I started seeing a therapist. It took all that for me just to get to the point where therapy seemed like something that would work for me. And it's been pretty good. But the benefits of therapy are a lot different for me than how other people explain it. And I've actually never heard anyone explain this. Therapy has just been an excuse to say that I'm right. I have these mindsets and these ideas about myself, and then I think that's an arrogant idea. You probably aren't that way because most people think that they're above and they're actually not. And then I could talk to my therapist and say, this is sort of what I think. And she goes, no, you're right. And that has happened multiple times. And that has been nice, where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm smart or bright, or, you know, I've always thought I was articulate because of YouTube, but I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm smart. And she goes, you are. And it's like, okay, cool, boom, done. Easy as that. And not that this is a good thing, but her being like, you're smarter than a lot of people. It's like, you know, it's fine to be confident and arrogant in ways that other people can see, I think. I don't know. I haven't thought through that pattern enough, but I think one thing she said was, you're extremely self-aware and most people aren't. And it was nice to know that. So that's what therapy has done for me, because I will convince myself out of a positive mindset because I think it's arrogant. And unfortunately, sometimes that leads to a negative mindset of maybe I'm an idiot. And having someone tell you that's not true is a nice feeling. So that's that. This is essentially a podcast because I feel like I have a decent amount more to cover. That is how my depression has healed. So why has this year been the worst year of my life? Well, I'm not going to go into all the details at the beginning, but a lot of you know that my daughter was born 3 months early. It was the most difficult thing that I could have ever dealt with. You're basically every day waiting to be told if your daughter is going to survive or not. It's a horrible feeling, horrible feeling. After we had the child and our daughter had to be resuscitated back to life, which is horrifying. She was in the NICU for 2 months, so we had to go to the hospital every single day for 2 months. She came home. When she was born, she was 1 pound, 15 ounces. Wild. She came home, and then we had to deal with a newborn with a lot of issues that maybe a normal child wouldn't have to deal with. We got through that. We learned how to be parents. That was very difficult, as anyone has ever explained to you. And now our daughter is perfect. I mean, 9 months old. She's catching up with all the babies. She's caught up with all the babies her age in terms of like physicality, how much she weighs. She's beautiful. It's incredible. I post her on my story all the time, and I know people are like, don't post your baby. I'm not trying to do that. I just I'm walking and she's in it, and it's beautiful and it's cute and she's awesome. It's still very difficult. It's still very difficult time-wise. You spend at least 8 hours a day looking after your kid. So if you're someone before who's like, I barely feel like I have 8 hours, you're gonna have to find 8 hours and then find those extra 3 hours to work, because that's what I've been doing. I've been getting a lot done, but such less time, but more concentrated. So about the same is happening. I just need more time. Now that I have this tool or this muscle of doing a lot in a little amount of time, I want to be able to, now I want more time. So it's difficult. We have babysitters, but things got really, really hectic in the last month, like really bad. We've been living in LA. LA is sort of my dream home. And I love LA with a passion. I thought I was going to live here forever with our daughter, but we're moving to Texas. And we have to, because I can't go into super detail about who specifically, but we had a family member call in Texas who was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. And then a week later, I got a call from a family member in South Carolina, where I'm from, of another family member who was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. So 2 cancers where essentially they could go at any time. This is their business. I don't want to talk about, they could last 5 years or a week. It's kind of that situation. I hope my wife's not watching this, because it's been very hard, obviously. Very, very, very difficult to deal with. So we made the very rational decision to move to Texas for now, to spend as much time as we can with one of our relatives, and then from there, I will probably be flying to South Carolina and back, because Texas is where my wife's entire family is. So our daughter will have cousins and people and family to hang out with. And we're just going to ride that out. I mean, honestly, the longer that we can last in Texas, the better. But I just have to say it. If things don't go well, then we don't know what our options are. We don't know if we'll move back here or what. But the world is our toaster oven. We'll see. So it's been very difficult dealing with that. And even that being said, when we found out about Texas, my wife flew down there, and I basically had to look after our child for 3 or 4 days alone. And it was so hard. Single parents out there. I've done, okay, so I did construction for a while. Construction is, I'm not kidding, is nothing at all compared to, well, look, being a parent, first of all, but also being a single parent, not even comparable. Like, construction is light work. It is probably 3 times as hard as doing like really hard physical manual labor. I mean, that part's kind of fun. It's the sweeping in construction that sucks. But that sweeping is nothing compared to having to look after a kid, having to deal with their temperament, having to make sure they're okay. It's just tough. It's really, and it's all for the child, right? It's not like you're doing that to make a paycheck at the end of the day. You're doing that to keep your child alive. So doing it alone for 3 or 4 days was so hard. And then we went to Texas, or then I flew to Texas with my daughter alone, which was a nightmare. And then we stayed in Texas for 2 weeks, dealing with a lot of complications and living at our in-laws' house, which on my story, if you watched, you knew was very, very tough for me as well. I do not do well in other people's spaces, especially looking after a kid, which is already hard, in somebody else's space. It was a nightmare. It's very difficult. And I say that selfishly for myself, but it was a nightmare more for the other people involved, because it's still my family, but it's not the direct family I grew up with. It's the family my wife has. So obviously she's going through a lot more than I was going through, but it was still so difficult to deal with. And today we had some calls and some talks last night that were not great. So we got back 2 days ago, and my wife is already going back today, back to Texas. And hopefully she'll be back in 4 or 5 days, and I'm going to have to do the single dad thing again. And obviously that's the worst thing ever for my wife as well, but she just had to make the tough decision, and she has to be there for this person in Texas. So after I get off this thing, and our nanny leaves in 2 hours, 3 hours, let me make sure real quick. In 3 hours, I have 3 hours. I'm back to like full dad mode all day, and that is terrifying to me because it was so hard the first time, but every time she gets bigger, it becomes easier. Anyways, so that's essentially it. All the things you don't want to deal with, like all the things that lead to divorce, which obviously my wife and we have such an amazing relationship, that will never happen, but we're dealing with all of them at the same time. We dealt with almost losing a child, but we didn't, so that was amazing. And now we're dealing with losing a family member. We're dealing with moving. On top of all this, we're also dealing with the fact that I switched careers. I didn't even switch careers. I just quit my job. So that's been really tough. I mean, I'm getting paid to make these videos, especially thanks to Squarespace. So this is my job for now. But I basically switched careers, and I'm working every second of every day. I do not do anything of leisure anymore. I actually went for a walk the other day, but like I can walk with my daughter, so I can leisure with my kid, but I'm not leisuring when I'm not with my kid. I am fully in. I'm fully focused. She's not on screens either, so I'm not distracting her with anything. We are fully locked in. And it's gonna be a tough year, but I haven't been depressed. I've been able to deal with all these situations where I get angry and upset and annoyed, but not depressed. It's been incredible. So hopefully this video is useful to anyone out there. This is a huge update video. I felt like I could have made 4 videos talking about all the subjects within this video. But that's it. We're growing, we're moving, we're getting forward, and if there's any getting forward, that doesn't make any sense. So someone's about to walk by my car again. I don't know why I'm so bad at vlogging when someone walks by my car. So give me not 8 seconds. And then they're gonna take a look inside. And she smiled at me. That's cool. Hi. She has a very intense walk. Cool. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video I make. Yes, of course, I plan on making amazing videos. I'm switching all of my like art stuff to my SquadBots post. So, you know, if you followed me for skateboarding, you don't have to see any of that. But if you do like all my art stuff, you can follow that. And it's the SquadBots on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. And I'm going to be doing daily posts, which I know is insane, but I figured out a way to basically do daily content. And then with this stuff, I actually plan on doing a lot of content, and it's probably going to be in the like sort of like motivation, life, working out, fitness stuff, which you're like, there's so much of that already, but it's just what's motivating me. It's what's calling me. It's what I'm into. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to think that through. But for now, I'm going to be posting a lot on the SquadBots. And then when I can get my life together, I'll probably do like some type of podcast or some type of motivation here. And I can't wait to get started with that. But we need a little bit of consistency. And that'll probably be once we move, which is going to be in 2 weeks. Like it's going to be soon. Like honestly, before you know it, you're going to be like, whoa, John's just like doing this new thing. And it's going to be cool. So thanks so much for watching. And I will see you. I'll see you very soon. Thank you so much. Take care, progress daily, and keep killing it. Should I do the thumbnail face here? No, I'll do it. All right, bye.